LeBron James sees a video of his absent father and breaks down on camera. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The room smelled faintly of coffee and new carpet, the soft hum of the camera equipment filling the otherwise still air. LeBron James sat in the center, framed by heavy curtains and muted lighting. The director gave a small nod, and the cameraman rolled. They'd been shooting all morning, covering the usual questions: his early games, his high school years, the championships. It was supposed to be one of those feel-good, behind-the-scenes documentaries people ate up before the playoffs. But everyone in the room knew today wasn't about banners or rings. It was about what never made the highlight reels. LeBron leaned back in his chair, adjusting his gray hoodie. He looked relaxed, but anyone who knew him could see the slight tension in his jaw, the stiffness in his fingers. Across from him, the producer, a woman named Karen who had worked with him for years, hesitated before speaking. "We found something," she said carefully. "Something personal." LeBron raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" "It's a video," she said, glancing quickly at the crew, making sure they were ready. "Of your father." The words hung in the air like a dropped ball. LeBron didn't react at first. He blinked once, slow and deliberate. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "My father," he repeated, voice steady. Karen nodded. "It's from years ago. An interview he gave to a local news station. Never aired. We got the footage last night." The room was dead silent. Even the cameraman, a guy who had filmed rock stars and presidents, held his breath. They all knew the story. LeBron's father, Anthony McClelland, had been a ghost his entire life, mentioned in articles, speculated about in barbershops, but never part of the picture. LeBron had built a kingdom without him, had become a legend on courts the man had never even stepped foot on. LeBron rubbed his hands together slowly, thinking. He could have said no. Could have shut it down right there. But something, curiosity, anger, maybe something he couldn't name, made him nod. "Play it," he said. Karen gave a signal. A technician tapped a few keys, and the big screen on the side wall came to life. Static flickered, then cleared. The image was grainy, rough, like it had been forgotten on a shelf somewhere for decades. There he was. Anthony McClelland looked tired, older than he should have been, his eyes darting nervously at whoever was behind the camera. He wore a faded jacket, a cigarette dangling from his fingers. For a few seconds, he just sat there, saying nothing, breathing hard like he had sprinted to the interview. Finally, he spoke. "They said I had a son," Anthony mumbled. His voice was raspy, the words slurring a little. "LeBron. Big name now, huh?" LeBron didn't move. His face stayed neutral, but his hand clenched on the armrest, knuckles whitening. "I wasn't ready," Anthony continued, shaking his head. "Wasn't ready to be nobody's father. I had my own mess. Didn't need another mouth to feed. I figured, he's better off without me." The words hit like punches. Nobody in the room dared to look at LeBron. They just kept the cameras steady, catching everything. Anthony laughed bitterly in the video, a sound that didn't match anything funny. "Maybe I was wrong," he muttered. "Maybe I messed up worse than I thought." The camera shifted slightly. The interviewer, off-screen, asked, "If you could say something to him, what would you say?" Anthony stared into the camera for a long moment. His mouth opened, closed. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry. I was scared. I didn't know how to be there. I didn't think I had anything worth giving." LeBron exhaled slowly, barely a sound. His eyes were locked on the screen, but his mind was somewhere else, maybe on the cracked concrete courts where he learned to dribble, maybe on the nights he stayed up late wondering why he didn't have what other kids had. Anthony finished the interview with a shrug. "Maybe he don't need to hear from me. Maybe he's better off not knowing." The screen went black. Silence. Heavy, suffocating. LeBron sat frozen for a few seconds, then leaned back slowly. He wiped a hand down his face, breathing out through his nose. When he spoke, his voice was low and even. "That's it?" he asked. Karen nodded. "That's it." LeBron chuckled, a short, humorless sound. He stared at the ground, shaking his head slightly. Everyone waited, giving him space, but the cameras kept rolling. That was the deal. Full access, no edits. He said he didn't think he had anything worth giving, LeBron said after a long pause. He looked up, eyes glassy but not quite breaking. Funny thing is, he was right. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody moved. LeBron stood up, stretching his arms over his head, trying to shake off the heavy feeling pressing down on him. He paced a few steps, then turned back toward the chair. "You know what's crazy," he said, half smiling. "Everything I ever needed, I found without him. My mom. My coaches. My friends. They gave me the love, the lessons, the discipline." He paused, running a hand over his beard. "But there's always that one part of you that wonders. Even when you're winning. Even when you're on top." He sat back down heavily. Karen gave him a questioning look, silently asking if he wanted to stop filming. LeBron caught it and shook his head. "Nah," he said. "Keep it rolling." The crew settled back in, some stealing quick glances at each other. They knew they were capturing something raw, something real, the kind of moment you didn't stage or script. LeBron leaned forward again, elbows on his knees. "Maybe it's good," he said. "Maybe it's good I never knew him. Gave me a reason to be better. Stronger." The words sounded strong, but underneath was a quiet sadness that couldn't be hidden. "Not today." He looked up at Karen, voice steady. "What's next?" he asked. Karen hesitated. There was a next step, but it would be even harder. Still, she nodded toward the tablet on the table. "We found where he was living last," she said quietly. "If you want, we can set something up." The weight of the moment settled in again. LeBron looked at the tablet, then back at the blank screen where his father's image had disappeared. His jaw tightened, and for the first time that day, there was fire in his eyes. "Maybe some stories," he said quietly, "are better left untold." But nobody in the room believed he meant it. Not really. And deep down, neither did he. The day after the interview, LeBron sat alone in the private media room, the lights dimmed low. The crew had packed up, but he had asked for the key. He needed the silence. No cameras. No questions. No advice. Just him and the weight that had followed him his whole life. The tablet sat on the table where Karen had left it. A simple screen. A simple address. Somewhere in Ohio. A tiny town he'd never heard of. According to the notes, Anthony hadn't lived there long. No forwarding address. No next of kin. Just a name scribbled on a lease, a worn-out couch left behind. LeBron stared at it for a long time, tapping his fingers against the wood. It would be easy to walk away. Easier than facing what might be at the end of that road. But then again, easy was never how he lived. His phone buzzed. It was Maverick Carter, his oldest friend. "You good?" the text said. LeBron thought about lying. Thought about sending a thumbs-up emoji and pretending none of this mattered. But the truth was burning holes in him. He texted back, "Nah. Not yet." No reply came, but he didn't need one. Maverick understood. LeBron grabbed the tablet and stood up. His decision was made. 2 hours later, he was behind the wheel of an SUV, hat low over his face, driving out of the city like any regular guy trying to outrun his own thoughts. No security detail. No entourage. Just him, the road, and a knot tightening in his chest. The drive stretched longer than he thought. Endless fields rolled by, broken by clusters of tired houses and gas stations. This wasn't the world of arenas and bright lights. This was the forgotten side of America, the kind of place where dreams either dried up or never got planted. Finally, he pulled up to a sagging, two-story house that looked abandoned. The paint peeled off in sheets. A busted tricycle lay tipped over in the yard. There were no cars in the driveway, no lights in the windows. Only the wind moving the branches. LeBron sat there for a moment, staring. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe Anthony had been gone so long there wasn't even a ghost left to find. Still, he got out. His footsteps crunched on the gravel. Every part of him said turn around, but he knocked anyway. No answer. He knocked again, harder. A voice called out from inside, rough and suspicious. "Who is it?" LeBron's heart kicked hard against his ribs. He almost left. Almost ran. But then he found his voice. "LeBron," he said. "LeBron James." The door creaked open a few inches. An old man peered out, eyes cloudy but sharp. "I don't know any LeBron James," he said. "I'm looking for Anthony McClelland," LeBron said, steady. The man's face shifted. Recognition flickered there, followed by something colder. Regret, maybe. Or guilt. "He ain't here," the man said finally. "Ain't been for a while." LeBron nodded slowly. "You know where he went?" The old man shrugged. "He talked about heading west. Said he was tired of Ohio. Said there wasn't nothing left here for him." LeBron stood there, feeling the words settle like dust. The man hesitated, then added, "He used to talk about you, you know. After he had a few drinks. Said you made it big. Said you didn't need nobody." LeBron didn't know what to say to that. It felt like being handed a box of memories you didn't want but couldn't throw away. The man looked him over, taking in the expensive car, the clean shoes, the weight LeBron carried without saying a word. "You're better off," the man muttered, almost to himself. Then he shut the door. LeBron stood there for a long moment, staring at the cracked paint, listening to the silence. Then he turned and walked back to his SUV. He sat there for a while, hands on the steering wheel, forehead resting against it. This wasn't a reunion. This wasn't closure. It was just another empty room he couldn't fill. He started the engine and drove away, the house shrinking in his rearview mirror until it was nothing but a speck against the gray sky. On the way back, he stopped at a diner on the side of the road. No one recognized him, and he didn't want them to. He ordered black coffee and sat in a booth by the window, staring out at the parking lot. An old basketball hoop hung off a telephone pole across the street, the net long gone. A couple of kids played there anyway, tossing a flat ball at the rusted rim, laughing like it didn't matter that the world had forgotten them. LeBron watched them, remembering the nights he shot hoops until his fingers were numb, the endless hours chasing something he couldn't even name yet. He pulled out a pen from his pocket and grabbed a napkin. He didn't know why. He just started writing. He wrote about his mother. About the coaches who picked him up when he fell. About the teammates who fought beside him. About the fans who believed before he did. He wrote about the man who gave him half his DNA but none of his heart. He wrote about forgiveness. When he finished, he folded the napkin and tucked it into his jacket. Maybe he would never give it to Anthony. Maybe he'd never see him. But that wasn't the point. It was enough that he wrote it. Back in the car, LeBron drove home under the deepening dusk, feeling something shift inside him. Not peace. Not exactly. But something close. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the stars were out. His house stood there, warm and solid, built on foundations he laid himself. Gloria's car was parked out front. He smiled, the first real smile of the day. He wasn't broken. He wasn't missing anything. He had built his own family, his own legacy. And he didn't need anyone's permission to feel whole. As he stepped inside, the sound of laughter drifted from the living room. His sons were wrestling on the couch, his daughter shouting at them to stop before they broke something. LeBron stood there a second longer, soaking it in. Then he closed the door behind him. 2 days later, LeBron sat in the locker room after practice, staring at the floor, mind somewhere far from the court. His teammates laughed and joked around him, throwing towels, talking trash about their shooting percentages, planning dinners. It was normal. It was life. But he wasn't fully in it. Maverick walked in, nodding at a few players, then sliding onto the bench next to him. He didn't say anything at first, just waited until the room started clearing out, until only a few echoes bounced off the walls. "You went to see him," Maverick said finally. LeBron didn't lift his head. He wasn't there. Maverick nodded, like he already knew. "You good?" LeBron snorted softly. "Define good." Maverick chuckled. "Breathing. Walking. Still pulling up from 30 feet without blinking." LeBron allowed himself a small smile, but it faded quickly. "He's still out there, somewhere," he said. "Living. Breathing. And I'm supposed to just, what? Pretend it doesn't matter?" "You already did," Maverick said. "Your whole life, man." LeBron leaned back against the locker, feeling the cool metal through his shirt. He thought about the napkin tucked in his jacket pocket. He hadn't thrown it away. Couldn't. It sat there like a weight he couldn't lift or set down. Maverick watched him carefully. "You don't owe him anything, Bron. Not your anger. Not your forgiveness. Not a damn thing." LeBron stared at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he stood up, grabbing his bag. "Maybe not," he said. "But I owe it to myself." He left the locker room without another word. That night, LeBron couldn't sleep. He sat on the back porch, hoodie pulled up, staring at the stars. His mind spun in circles. Every success, every trophy, every kid who wore his jersey, it should have been enough. But the hole inside him wasn't about basketball. It was about the kid who waited and waited for someone who never showed up. His phone buzzed beside him. Another text from Karen. Found something. He almost ignored it. But his thumb moved anyway, tapping the link she sent. It was another video. This one was rougher, shakier, clearly filmed by a handheld camera. No news station. No crew. Just Anthony McClellan sitting on a beat-up lawn chair somewhere, smoking, rambling. The date on the file said it was filmed 2 years ago. LeBron hesitated. Then he hit play. Anthony's voice was slower now, like years had dragged it down. "I ain't no good man," he said, voice cracking. "Ain't no good father. Never was. But I see him. I see my boy on TV. And I think, maybe he don't need me. Maybe he became everything I couldn't be." He took a long drag from his cigarette. "Truth is, I never stopped thinking about him. Not one day." LeBron felt his throat tighten, his chest burn. He paused the video, setting the phone face down. He didn't want pity. He didn't want apologies delivered years too late. He just wanted understanding. Maybe that was too much to ask. He thought about his kids sleeping upstairs. About Bronny, about Bryce, about Jury. He thought about all the times he showed up, every game, every recital, every bedtime story. He had promised himself he would be different. That he would break the cycle. And he had. But why did it still feel like something was missing? The next morning, he made a decision. He called Karen. Set it up. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'll see what I can do." 3 days later, LeBron found himself standing outside a halfway house on the outskirts of Dayton, Ohio. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even clean. But it was where Anthony had last checked in. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk. He hesitated at the door. He didn't know what he was expecting. An apology? A handshake? Closure? Maybe there was no right way for this to end. He pushed open the door. Inside, a few tired men sat watching an old basketball game on a tiny TV. Nobody looked up. The smell of cigarettes and stale coffee hung heavy in the air. A woman at the desk looked up, eyebrows raising slightly when she recognized him. "I'm looking for Anthony McClelland," LeBron said, voice steady. She didn't smile. She just nodded toward the back. LeBron walked down a narrow hallway, heart pounding harder with every step. He found Anthony sitting alone at a table, hunched over a paper cup of coffee, staring at nothing. For a second, LeBron just stood there, frozen. Anthony looked up slowly, confusion flickering across his face, then shock, then something deeper, shame. He pushed back from the table, half standing. "LeBron," he said, voice hoarse. LeBron didn't move. Didn't speak. Anthony swallowed hard. I wasn't expecting." His voice trailed off. He looked smaller than LeBron imagined. Older. Weaker. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Time seemed to stretch and snap all at once. Finally, LeBron walked over and sat down across from him. Anthony stared at him, eyes wet. "I messed up," he said, voice breaking. "I messed up bad. You don't owe me nothing." LeBron said nothing. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head. He just listened. "I watched you," Anthony said. "All these years. I was too much of a coward to reach out. Thought you didn't need me." LeBron's voice was low when he finally spoke. "I didn't." Anthony flinched like he'd been slapped. But he nodded. He knew. LeBron leaned forward, elbows on the table. "But I still needed to hear it." Anthony looked down at his hands, gnarled and trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry, son." The word son hit harder than any punch. LeBron closed his eyes, breathing deep. He pulled the napkin out of his pocket and set it on the table between them. Anthony looked at it, confused. LeBron stood up. "I wrote it for me," he said. "Not for you." Anthony picked up the napkin with shaking hands, unfolding it slowly. By the time he looked up, LeBron was already walking away. No fanfare. No forgiveness speech. Just the truth, laid bare between them. Outside, the night was cool against LeBron's skin. He felt lighter somehow. Not healed. Not whole. But freer. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The days after the meeting passed like a blur. Practice, meetings, family dinners, they all blurred together into a kind of rhythm LeBron didn't fully feel part of. He was there, present, but somewhere deep inside he was still sitting across from that shaky table, hearing that single word, son. He hadn't told anyone what happened. Not Maverick. Not his wife. Not even Gloria. Some moments were too raw to explain. Some things you had to carry alone. The season was winding down, and the pressure was building. Every game felt heavier. Every mistake sharper. It wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about proving, to himself more than anyone else, that he wasn't broken. That facing the past hadn't weakened him. After a grueling practice one evening, he stayed behind in the gym, long after the others left. He put up shot after shot, the ball slicing through the net in perfect silence. No cameras. No fans. Just him in the basket and the faint echo of his own breathing. Coach Davis found him there, wiping his hands with a towel. "You're gonna wear out the floor if you keep this up," Davis said, half joking. LeBron caught the ball, spinning it slowly in his hands. "Maybe that's the point," he said quietly. Coach didn't press. He walked over and sat on the bleachers, watching. "You want to talk?" he offered. LeBron shook his head. "Not now." Coach nodded like he understood. Then he stood up, tossed the towel on the bench, and left without another word. LeBron stayed until his arms ached and his legs trembled. Stayed until the world outside went dark. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, he finally realized why it hurt so much. It wasn't because he hadn't gotten an apology. It wasn't even because he hadn't gotten the childhood he deserved. It was because, for all his success, part of him had always wanted to be seen by the man who helped create him. And now he had been. Too late. Too broken. But seen, all the same. He closed his eyes and let the feeling crash over him without fighting it. The hurt. The anger. The sadness. He let it all in. And when he woke up the next morning, he felt different. Not fixed. Not cured. But ready. That night, the team had a nationally televised game. Big crowd. Playoff atmosphere. The kind of night where legacies are sharpened. LeBron laced up his sneakers slowly, feeling the weight of it all settle into his bones. He wasn't just playing for the fans. Or the critics. Or the banners. He was playing for the boy who had to teach himself how to dream. As he jogged out onto the court, the roar of the crowd washed over him like a wave. For the first time in a long time, he let himself feel it. Not just the noise, but the love. The belief. The game tipped off, and LeBron played like a man with nothing left to prove but everything left to give. He dove for loose balls. He battled in the paint. He knocked down threes with a snarl. Every drive to the basket felt personal. Every assist felt like a gift. In the third quarter, after a brutal rebound, he caught a pass at the top of the key. Defender in his face. Clock winding down. Then he rose up and let it fly. The ball sailed through the air, clean and perfect, and splashed through the net at the buzzer. The arena exploded. LeBron didn't pump his fist. Didn't scream. He just stood there for a moment, chest heaving, staring up into the lights. Somewhere up there, he imagined, someone was watching. After the game, reporters crowded around him. Questions flew fast and thick. About the shot. About the playoff picture. About legacy. LeBron answered politely, giving them what they needed. But when one reporter, a young guy from Cleveland, asked a question that cut deeper, the room shifted. LeBron, the reporter said, after everything you've accomplished, do you ever think about the people who weren't there to see it? The room held its breath. LeBron looked at him, really looked. And then, without dodging, without deflecting, he answered. All the time, he said. He paused, feeling the weight of it settle. But tonight, I realized it doesn't matter who was there or who wasn't. It matters that I am. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. The next morning, clips of his answer were everywhere. Headlines called it powerful, raw, inspiring. But LeBron didn't read the articles. He spent the morning at home, shooting baskets in the driveway with Bronny and Bryce, laughing when they talked trash, letting Jury braid his hair while he sat still pretending not to flinch. Later, he sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, and started writing again. This time, not to his father. This time, to his kids. He wrote about love. About showing up. About the weight of promises kept. He wrote about how greatness isn't measured in rings or trophies, but in how you carry yourself when no one's watching. When he finished, he folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box marked simply, for later. It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't a headline moment. It was just a man, a father, doing what needed to be done. And somehow, that meant more than any championship ever could. That evening, as the sun set low over the hills, LeBron sat on the porch with his family, laughing at nothing, feeling the peace he had chased for so long finally settle in. The past didn't own him. The future didn't scare him. He was right where he needed to be. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The NBA Finals came faster than anyone expected. One moment it was regular season battles, the next it was playoff wars, and now, here he was again, center stage. The biggest platform. The biggest spotlight. But something had shifted in LeBron. Winning wasn't about proving anything anymore. It wasn't about silencing ghosts. It was about finishing the journey on his terms. The night before Game 7, LeBron stood alone on the balcony of the team hotel, looking out over the city. The skyline glittered, cars snaking through the streets far below. Somewhere out there were millions of people rooting for him, betting against him, waiting to see if he would rise again or fall. He thought about everything that had happened over the past few months. The video. The drive. The meeting. The letter to his kids. All of it had stripped him down to something realer than he'd ever shown the world before. And it didn't scare him anymore. It grounded him. A knock on the sliding door behind him made him turn. It was Bronny, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate like it was a peace offering. Couldn't sleep? Bronny asked, handing him one. LeBron smiled and took the cup. You either? Bronny shook his head, grinning. Big day tomorrow. LeBron laughed, and for a second it was just a dad and his son, not a global icon and his heir. They sat side by side on the balcony, sipping their drinks, saying nothing. They didn't have to. This was the payoff, not the trophies, not the banners, but this. Being here. Being present. You nervous? Bronny asked after a while. LeBron thought about it. Not the way I used to be. Why not? He turned to his son, seeing so much of himself at that age. Hungry. Searching. Needing answers to questions too big to ask out loud. Because, LeBron said, I already won. Bronny tilted his head, confused. But the game's tomorrow. LeBron smiled. Not that kind of winning. Bronny nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but knowing it was important. The next night, the arena shook with energy. Fans packed every seat, the air electric with anticipation. Cameras flashed, music blared, banners waved. It was chaos, but inside LeBron was still. He moved through warm-ups with his usual calm, slapping hands with teammates, giving quiet nods to coaches. He didn't need the pregame speeches or the hype. He knew who he was. He knew why he was here. When the game tipped off, it was brutal from the start. Both teams clawed for every inch. Bodies hit the floor. Shots were contested. Runs came and went. Nobody could build a lead. Every point was a fistfight. LeBron played like a man unburdened. Not reckless. Not desperate. Just free. He found open teammates, attacked the rim, hit mid-range jumpers with a cold precision that didn't come from anger anymore, it came from peace. The fourth quarter came down to the final seconds. Tie game. Shot clock off. Their ball. Everyone knew where the ball was going. LeBron took the inbound, dribbled up court, and waited for the defense to set. No rush. No panic. Just him in the moment. He saw the double team coming and smiled. He drove left, pulled up just inside the arc, and rose for the jumper. For a heartbeat, time froze. The ball arced high, spinning slow. And then it dropped clean through the net. The buzzer sounded. Pandemonium erupted. Teammates swarmed him, the crowd roaring so loud it shook the floor. Confetti rained from the rafters. Cameras flashed from every direction. LeBron stood in the center of it all, arms raised, not in triumph, but in thanks. After the celebration, after the trophy, after the interviews, he found a quiet hallway in the arena and ducked away from the madness. He leaned against the wall, closing his eyes, just breathing. Footsteps approached. It was Gloria, his mother, smiling through tears. You did it, baby, she said, pulling him into a hug. He hugged her back, harder than he had in years. I had to, he whispered. For you. For them. For you too, she said, kissing his forehead. He nodded. He knew. Later that night, at home, the family gathered in the living room, championship gear still on, half-eaten pizza boxes scattered everywhere. LeBron sat back in the armchair, watching his kids laugh in roughhouse, watching Gloria tease Maverick about his gray hairs, watching his wife dance around the kitchen. This was it. This was everything. He pulled out his phone and opened the draft folder. The letter he had written to his kid sat there, untouched since the day he wrote it. He read it over again. He added a new line at the end. No matter what comes next, always remember, you are enough. You always were. You always will be. He saved it, closed the phone, and slipped it into his pocket. Tomorrow, the media would dissect the game. They'd argue about where he ranked all time. They'd nitpick his stats, his legacy, his every move. Let them. He knew the truth. He had faced the ghosts. He had carried the weight. And he had won, not by forgetting where he came from, but by choosing who he wanted to be. As the night wore on, and the house settled into soft laughter and clinking glasses, LeBron sat back and let it all wash over him. No more chasing. No more doubting. No more needing someone else's approval to know his worth. He was home. He was whole. And he was finally free.